Alright, good afternoon. My name is Oliver Dutulio. Today I'm going to be discussing the American criminal justice system. We're going to be doing through the components of the criminal justice system, the issues with the efficiency of the criminal justice system, the Uniform Crime Report, the evolution of crime, the Pelian principles, and the progression through the criminal justice system in the American court rooms. The components of the American criminal justice system are essentially the police, which are responsible for investigations and arrests, the courts, which are responsible for prosecutions, and the corrections department, which is responsible for carrying out punitive actions. Both the police, the police, the courts, and the corrections department operate on the federal and state system. However, there's a private department to policing and the corrections department where private prisons deal with the overflow from federal and state prisons, and private security forces are used by civilians that feel that the state-provided police system doesn't do them enough protection. That'll bring us to issues with efficiency of the criminal justice system. We've got police departments that are undermanned. Back when the Praetorian Guard was invented, there was one law enforcement agent to roughly every 75 citizens, whereas today we have one law enforcement agent to every 300 to 400 citizens. There's also police corruption, where police officers deal with things like bribes, and their jobs are just getting harder because of the violence that America has put itself through in the 21st century. The court systems have fallen victim to political agendas where politicians have promised to get tough on crimes and make new laws that will prevent criminals from having such a free reign over our society. Also, there's a lot of murky legal territory right now regarding cybercrime and terrorism, surprisingly enough, because we've been waging a steady war against terrorism for the last 10 years, and it seems very distinctive. However, the legal territory on what constitutes as terrorism is not completely clear. And then problems with the corrections system is that they're simply overcrowded. This brings us to the Uniform Crime Report and the National Incident-Based Reporting System, which the UCR is an older version of reporting crime. It typically only reports one incident per offense. For example, if I steal a man's car and then hit someone going down the street, the only thing that gets reported is that I hit someone going down the street, not that I stole a car. Also, it only reported 21 other minor offenses, whereas the combination effort of the UCR and the NIDRS reports every offense of the crime, so it's a more detailed report of criminal activity, as well as 49 offenses instead of just the 21. After the Uniform Crime Report, we're going to discuss the evolution of crime. I've chosen 3 crime wave eras that are typically important in the United States history. 1920 to 1933, which would mark the era of Prohibition. It was an obvious response that organized crime would then develop a black market of illegal alcohol sale. It's very similar to today's war on drugs, where drugs are illegal, so we have an underground drug trade. However, ironically enough, when Prohibition was amended, the illegal alcohol trade stopped. The next important period of the criminal justice system would be 1950 to 2000. This is our civil rights movement. It's typically where we establish civil rights for African Americans, women, children, Native Americans, and any other type of minority that lived with us inside the United States. It's also when the Rodney King beating took place, which was the first realization that police brutality combined with media may not be the best thing, considering the way that went down. There was a lot of hearsay on what actually had happened and why Rodney King was pulled over, but what was conclusive was that the police did brutalize him pretty badly for a speeding ticket. This brings us to 2001 up until the present, where we're dealing with cybercrimes. We're a technological era of society. We use iPads and iPhones daily. Everything is electronic now. We can steal information through particles in the air. Crime has taken a new route through that because technology has made things readily accessible and very convenient for people to use legally, but as well as for criminals to conduct crimes with. And also we have the war on terror, which is the United States international policy where we will just not tolerate that kind of thing. There's also domestic terrorism and cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism really falls into cyber crimes, and domestic terrorism would really just be any act of terrorism that happens here in the United States. The Pelian principles are a set of policing principles that are based on community policing. It is the concept that the police derive their power from the people, and the people are of the police. So the police recruit from American society and then protect American society. It's kind of out of date. The way crime is going nowadays, it's not really smart to be sending community watch programs out to deal with violent criminals that we have in the 21st century, especially with automatic weapons being as available as they are. Furthermore, the Peelian principles rely a lot on the police's relation with the public, and that's not all that great right now, especially with the Ferguson shootings and multiple other police issues of them just being too violent towards people. People don't trust the police because they think they're going to get hurt. Progression through the criminal justice system would essentially be that first we have to establish that a crime has happened. You can't just say that things are going on. Something physically has to occur. A house has to be burned down, and someone has to be holding matches for you to have a crime. Simply holding matches is not a crime, and a house burning down is not a crime. That leads us to an arrest, which will bring you to a point where you will be read your charges by a judge at your first hearing, and you'll be able to administer guilty, not guilty, or no contest, at which point if you and the court system are at conflict, there will be a trial as to what your fate will be. You can be pretrial released on bond, which is where you will get time to get yourself a defense attorney and build yourself a case so you hopefully don't go to jail. But here in the United States, there are simply too many criminal trials to try them all, and most are done away with on plea bargains. For example, if I have a judge with 2 murder cases in front of me, I will give murderer 1 a break if he connects me to murderer 2. This will all bring us to the American courtroom, which the first 2 steps of this don't really happen inside of a courtroom. It's the trial initiation, which is your 6th Amendment right to a speedy trial. Typically, the prosecution has 70 days to make some sort of a move to prosecute you with a crime. However, they can extend to 180 days, but these days aren't counted by things that the offender has done to delay the process, such as trying to escape, getting sick, and other things like this. After trial initiation has been established, there's a jury selection where the prosecution and defense will make sure that a jury is completely impartial. You wouldn't want to have someone who is a rape victim as a juror member for someone who is on trial for rape. That would be someone who would be partial towards the decision on that rapist. Anyway, moving forward, we have opening statements, which is just where the prosecution and the defense will list what evidence they will be presenting and why they will be, or the reason for presenting it, whether they believe that someone is guilty or innocent, and then we move on to the presentation of evidence, where the prosecution and the defense will actually show how that evidence produces a crime. Following the presentation of evidence, you have closing arguments, which will go in the pattern of defense, prosecution, defense, where the defense will make a closing statement, the prosecution will make a closing statement, and the defense will be awarded a chance to rebuttal the prosecution's closing statement. After that, the judge will ask the jury to remain impartial and remind them that their verdict must be made beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that if there's any reason that a jury member could doubt the prosecution's argument, they must return with a verdict of not guilty. And that's the beautiful thing about the American court system, is that you don't have to prove you're innocent, you just need to prove that you're not guilty. That brings us to jury deliberations, which is essentially the time that the jury spends reviewing evidence on their own so they can make a determination as to whether someone is innocent or guilty, and then they will review the verdict and hand the case over to the judge for sentencing. And that is the American courtroom. Anyway, that is my take on the American criminal justice system. Thank you very much for listening, and it's been a great semester.